What about his off-field issues? What about his locker room concerns? What about his age? Antonio Brown is 30. He'll be 31 next season. Most receivers tail off by the age of 33. There's no denying who he's been on the field. Antonio Brown's awesome. He's amazing on the field. He produces. But unfortunately, that's not all you factor in. It can't be all you factor in. You have to actually factor in, will he be on the field? He's right now under investigation with the league for a domestic dispute. He didn't show up the other day to a reckless driving charge that, because he wasn't there in court, he was found guilty of. These things add up, and they may just add up to a suspension for Antonio Brown. You don't know, what am I going to get on the field? Because I don't know if he's going to be there. You don't know, what am I going to get in the locker room? And you don't know, if you can answer either of those questions, for how long am I going to get it? That cannot equal sign first-round draft pick.
No, it can't be a first-round draft pick, but he's too talented to go for a third-round pick either. A third is, you're going to get more than a third. He can't go for a first. He can't go for a third. So guess what he goes for, folks? It's going to be in the second round somewhere, maybe a little additional something if it's, low in the second round. They may have to add something else. Antonio Brown is the most productive receiver since Jerry Rice. He is year in and year out consistently. Like, on the numbers, he is going to retire with the best argument against Jerry Rice, in fact. And he's a lot like Rice in certain ways, not off the field, but in terms of his work ethic and the fact that we've seen guys more talented, and yet somehow he's the guy leading the league in receptions or yards or touchdowns or whatever it is. He doesn't have any off years. His off years are as good as it can fit comfortably into the greatest who ever lived career, right? Like his off, he doesn't have them. Look, Julio Jones is bigger and just as talented, at least, probably more talented, and he just keeps his head down and works. Odell Beckham Jr. is clearly more talented and younger and a bigger star off the field. And yet, if you push come to shove, you said, who's the best receiver in football? The answer is Antonio Brown, like it or not. So he's going to fetch you a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. But for the reasons you pointed out, right. Trouble off the field. By the way, you didn't even mention coach saying, let's stay off social media, which we know because Antonio Brown was putting him on Facebook Live as he's giving the speech. He's so tuned out to what his coach is saying. For those reasons, he doesn't go for a first, his age, his contract, etc., but he'll go for a second.
But, Max, when you say Antonio Brown is the best receiver in football, I feel like you're all the reasons you lay out that he shouldn't command a first, you begin to ignore when you factor in who's the best receiver in football. This is not unlike the debate that you and I consistently have on Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers. It all becomes holistic at some point. It's one man, it's one dude, it's one receiver. And if Antonio Brown is, as you pointed out, a problem at times in the locker room, uses social media, has issues with his quarterback, whoever is to blame, has personality issues to the point that our own Ryan Clark has at times said, this isn't the dude. This isn't the guy you want to build your team around. Is 30, and by the way, I think that's really important in this calculation because you keep pointing out who he's been. I would never debate with you who Antonio Brown has been. But you start to have to ask yourself who he's going to be as well. When you start adding all that together, is he the best receiver in football? Not only the guys you mentioned. How about DeAndre Hopkins? DeAndre Hopkins, it seems to be buried in some kind of media Bermuda's Triangle when it comes to Houston. He is awesome. He's awesome. Absolutely
he's
amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
And part of that's because he's been playing with, Houston Kincaid's
but DeAndre Hopkins
the high school quarterback
is the Larry Fitzgerald or the Carter, or he's this generation's, oh, my God, look at those hands. Look at his hands. It's unbelievable.
And, oh, my God, never got the attention he deserved.
Sure.
Same with Fitzgerald.
Sure, but there's a reason why when push comes to shove, you said, who are the three best guys? Everyone's going to give you the same answer. And some people want to make a point by getting Hopkins in there or someone else, but it's Brown and it's Jones and it's Odell.
No.
And then you try to make the argument for everyone else. Let's be honest.
Well, what are we being honest about? Who DeAndre Hopkins has played with as quarterback?
Do you have him in the top
career?
three, yes or no?
I think he belongs in the top three today.
So who's
Absolutely. Out? You're not going to like it.
Odell. Well, look, Odell, this is what happens when you don't produce in the playoffs. You have to catch those balls.
And
let me say this.
But this brings us back to Antonio Brown. It's what happens when you factor in the whole receiver, not just his production on the field.
That's why.
Who they are on their team.
That's right. That's why Antonio Brown only goes for a second. Now, who they are on their team, this is interesting. What are receivers? What's the baseball equivalent of a receiver? It's a home run hitter, right? That's why the receivers are divas. And a lot of times the corners, too, because it's make or break, spectacular, chunk plays they talk about, touchdown pass catchers, right? That's Antonio Brown. So when I was a kid, there was a guy like that in baseball named Reggie Jackson, who is now in the Hall of Fame. He was a slugger on the Oakland A's, won 3 World Series, and comes to the New York Yankees, the Bronx Zoo Yankees. When I was a little kid, it's the late 70s. And people talk about his personality. He's a hot dog. He's a diva. Why don't you be like that slugger or that slugger? They just go about their jobs. But all Reggie Jackson did was win 2 more World Series with the Yankees by thumping home runs one after another when you needed it most. What you're saying about Antonio Brown is correct. I don't deny it. But, or maybe it's and, under pressure in the big games, it's not just that he's always productive.
Well,
do you trust him to make the big play in the big game under pressure?
He doesn't have that Reggie Jackson argument, to be clear. He does not have that Super Bowl trophy. He does not have those world championships.
But we see in the playoffs, hold on. We've seen in the playoffs and in big games in the regular season, for all the bluster, that dude makes plays, period, all the time.
Who's the best receiver in football? If we're setting this out, we both agree on his valuation to another team. Who's the best receiver in football? And you say, well, who is that guy to your team? I would ask you one simple question. Who was the MVP of the Steelers? Was it Antonio Brown? The team voted MVP. Was it a receiver?
No.
Was it Antonio Brown?
Yeah, right. But team votes, Reggie Jackson also wouldn't have won that vote because people didn't like him, right? But
that's going to be the best receiver in football. You might need to be the best receiver
Julio Jones, we were asking, why isn't he being schemed open in the end zone? He's not catching touchdown passes. Odell, hey, in the playoffs, you can't drop that pass. You never have to say that about Antonio Brown. Never at any point in any season in his entire career is it, why isn't he catching touchdown passes? Why isn't he giving you yards? Why isn't he coming through in the big moment? He always does.
The answer that Max didn't want to give us was Juju. Juju Smith-Schuster.
Love Juju Smith-Schuster. By the way, that Juju is the reason you can trade Antonio Brown. You got a number 1.